Okay, this is a problem I just made up, and I just want to walk you through how I constructed it. So if this were an exam situation, all I would truly have to give you are these two parts here, these two equations, a demand function and a supply function. Now, there's any number of questions I could ask you. I just want to walk through a few of them. The first thing I could do is I could ask you just to simply solve for me the equilibrium price and quantity. And quite frankly, if I do that, you should thank your lucky stars, because that hopefully should be an incredibly easy part to this. So I don't know why it's so small. So So if that's the case, then simply all we do is we set the two equations equal to each other. So you'll see that I set the 300 minus 2p equal to negative 100 plus 5p. And then I simply solve for p. Now I would suggest to you that you then substitute it into both the equations, that 57.14, into both equations, and you should get something roughly similar. In the case of demand, it's just a little bit off from what it would have been found for supply. And at that point, what I would suggest that you do is that now that we've got the equilibrium price and quantity, that you simply draw a graph that displays both of those pieces of information. Because then a second type of question I could ask you would be to either solve for me the consumer surplus, or I could ask you to solve for me the producer surplus. What I'm doing here is I'm solving for both, just to give you an idea of everything that's going on. To do that, what I need to do is solve for the y-intercept of the consumer surplus and the y-intercept for the supply curve to find the producer surplus. So to do that, I'm setting 0 equal to quantity in the demand function, and I'm finding that p equals 150. That would then appear way up here. And then substituting 0 for the quantity in the supply function, and that gets me 20. You'll notice here I have a non-zero y-intercept. This is a little bit of a deviation from what we've done in class. So pay attention to that, because this would give you another example of how we solve this kind of problem. And then simply to solve the consumer surplus again being the area below the demand curve to the price, that would be 1/2 base times height. So 1/2, then the difference between my y-intercept minus my equilibrium price times the equilibrium quantity. That gets me a number that has the label of dollars. Then for the producer surplus, I have 1/2 base times height, which in this case now would be the equilibrium price minus the y-intercept times the quantity. And again, that label would be in dollars. Now, what I wanted to do at this point is then look at a slight way we could use this, and that would be, what if I gave you an effective price ceiling? Let's say I set that price ceiling at $35. And then I could ask you two questions about that. First, I could ask you to solve for me the shortage or surplus that exists at that price of $35. And then I could ask you to solve for me the deadweight loss that exists. First thing I could do is find the shortage that exists. So at a relevant price ceiling of $35, that's below the equilibrium, and you can see that at the price of $35, which I substitute into both functions, that the quantity demanded will equal 230, which is right here, and that the quantity supplied at 35 would be 75. This illustrates that a shortage exists because the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. And the difference between them is 155. So that is the amount of my shortage. That is the horizontal distance between these 2 points. Then let's solve for the deadweight loss. To get the deadweight loss, all that I'm missing actually is one number. I'm missing this number right here. To get that number, all I have to do is substitute in 75 into the demand function to find that price. And in this case here, you can see here I'm saying I need the price at QD equals 75. That price equals 112.50. So I put that way up here. And then my deadweight loss will simply be 1/2 base times height. In this case, it's now going to be 112.50 minus 35 times 185.7 minus 75, giving this 4289.63, and that should be in dollars as a label. Okay, I would encourage you to look at the appendix to chapter 4 just to think about this a little bit deeper and further, but we can also talk about this later in class.